With historical Week 6 now in the books, Week 7 looked to prove much more exciting than Week 6 was. With only a handful of top 25 matchups, there were still some great powerhouse matchups that will leave us wondering, is it going to get any better than this? Find out next on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. I am the one and only Mr. CeeLo here. Thank you so much for coming along with us as we finish up week number 7. I know it's a little late in the week, but I'm still trying to get the schedule down. We have breaking news in the NFL, so you guys don't want to hear that. You want to hear about the wonderful scholastic action that took place on Saturday afternoon, and we actually started on Friday evening. As Cam Rising and the number 16 Utah Utes went into Sun Devil Stadium to face off with the unranked Arizona Sun Devils. And I'm going to be honest with you, seeing this game and watching Cam Rising once again fall, it was no fun. It's going to be a situation where more than likely he's done for the season yet again, as he finished 16 of 37, 209 yards, 3 interceptions. And I watched a report today saying that he was pretty much out for the remainder of the season. But quarterback Rising was dealing with some kind of finger/hand injury, but now the question about the 7th-year senior's collegiate eligibility is in question. But he has not played nearly as many games, so I would wonder if Rising is going to be able to come back. I would strongly say that he can be able to, because I've only seen, I think he's only played 3 games, maybe that. But again, Arizona State wins 27-19 and goes to 5-1 on the season, surprisingly. The Arizona Sun Devils also dealt with a lot of injuries last season outside of being inexperienced. So I would honestly say that this team is going to be one to watch. So as I said, I would be hard-pressed to watch this Arizona team climb up the rankings. As for the Utah Utes, freshman Isaac Wilson is going to be taking over at the helms for the Utah Utes for the foreseeable future. We wish Cam Rising the best, and hopefully he can finally get a season where he's healthy. It's presumed to be a lower leg injury, but you never know with these things. Then on Saturday, we dig into the top 25 as number 23 Illinois survives Purdue 50-49 in overtime. Let me explain. The Boilermakers were in a 24-3 hole at halftime. And this is why we say you have to put teams away. Because looking at this game, at the end of 3, it was 27-20. As Purdue came storming back, and then in the fourth quarter, it was just a back and forth affair as there were a combined 39 points scored in the fourth quarter.
God damn!
Then you look at where Illinois was going with this game. It looked like in the first half, this was just going to be a walkabout. They were just going to walk the dog on the Purdue Boilermakers, but the Boilermakers showed some resound. They showed up, and they actually put some serious points on the board. Ryan Brown was 18 of 26, 297 yards, 3 touchdowns, did not throw an interception. Impressive game, along with Brown also had 100 yards rushing on the ground. Not to mention, Devin McCoby had 100 yards rushing in that game and a score. But what was probably a wonderful sight for the Boilermaker fans was that they showed some life. Even being in a 24-3 hole, it looked like that the Illinois Illini were gonna walk all over the Boilermakers, but they showed some life in that third quarter and they were able to get the victory. Meanwhile, the Illini, who went to 5-1 with this victory and continued to move up the polls, well, maybe not so much with this one. Luke Altmaier threw a touchdown pass after they got behind, and they were able to go into overtime where they actually got the extra point to win the game. But this game looked more like I don't want to say a snooze fest, but it looked like Illinois basically was looking like they were going to just, when they got ahead at halftime, they came out the second half, and not only did they look flat, they looked more along just, I don't want to say discombobulated. It looked like they felt like they were just going to sleepwalk through the rest of this game, being that they were playing in Champaign. And Purdue saw an opportunity, and they nearly came out of Champaign with an upset, a major upset. But Illinois is able to survive 50-49 and continue their quest to possibly make a huge move in the Big Ten. Number 22, Pitt, 17, unranked California, 15. Now, California's got to go down as one of the few teams in all of the country that has had some really close games this year that they just cannot pull out. Of course, many of you remember the Miami game. But number 22 Pitt has got one of those defenses that is just screaming national championship. Now, I will say this. You look at a defense that has racked up 6 sacks. 6 sacks. Nothing is as impressive as a team that can rack up 6 sacks and only give up 15 points. And what's really impressive about it is you're doing it against a team whom, in my opinion, quarterback Mendoza, and I think a lot of Fernando Mendoza is a really good athlete. You know, without a doubt, he's one of the best athletes in the country. I love what he brings to the table. I love what he can do. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He was 27 of 37, 272 yards with a score. But then that's not only, he's a very good threat on the ground as well. Jack Andrews was able to find and hook up with Jack Andrews 8 times for 119 yards and a touchdown grab. But unfortunately, that just was not enough against a Pitt Panther defense that, as we said, picked up 6 sacks and is currently 6-0 for the first time in over 42 years. So you're looking at a football team that is not only coming into its own, but as we said, in this crowded list of undefeateds, this is going to be a team that is going to continue to compete within the annals of the conference. Now, it's going to be a question of whether or not they can hold their own. A lot of people are looking forward to 2 of their matchups, which is going to pit them against. They've got to go to Louisville, and they've got Clemson coming into Panther Stadium. So those are 2 matchups that if they can keep the ring running and they can continue to win, they're in a good place. I like this Panther defense. I think they're going to be very strong. The question is going to be, can they score enough points? I think that's a lot of what Pitt likes to run the football. They run it well, but to me, that's all they have. They don't really have an efficient passing game, and I think that's going to be huge if they're going to be a part of the college football playoff and be capable of being in this. Eli Holston was 14 of 28, 128 yards, 2 interceptions. If they can just get the quarterback position right, if they can just find a quarterback, not even a 5-star or 4-star, just a guy that understands what he's doing back there. I would even say if they could get them a scrambling quarterback, a guy that could, or an athletic quarterback, so to speak. If they could get themselves an athletic quarterback, that would be monstrous for this offense. You run the triple option or the read option. But then you look at Desmond Reed, who had 16 carries, 120 yards, including that 72-yarder for a touchdown. He had 2 touchdowns. And see, as I said, Pittsburgh has that mentality. They want to pound you into submission, and they don't want to make any mistakes with the football. That's why I say they've got to be careful with throwing the football against these Clemsons and these Louisvilles. You don't want to have your defense in short fields. And this is what I like about Pitt. Pitt is a very good defensive football team. They get after the quarterback, they tackle well, and don't make a lot of mistakes. But number 22, Pittsburgh, 17, California, 15. Number 21, Mizzou, came out after they took that drubbing at the hands of Texas A&M in College Station and took it out on UMass. In a 45-3, just exhibition, if you will. Brady Cook was 14 of 19, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. Running back Marcus Carroll had 15 carries, 91 yards, 3 touchdown runs for the Missouri Tigers. And Luther Burden, the all-conference wide receiver, had 5 grabs, 59 yards. In other news, this was a game that wasn't worth mentioning, but they're ranked in the top 25. So, as I said, I still think they're overrated, and I think the A&M game proved that much. But as we move this thing along, number 18, Kansas State, 31, unranked Colorado, 28. As you guys know, I am not a fan of Deion Sanders. I think his antics are just downright childish and just not that of a head coach. A lot of people will disagree with me. I don't care. I think a coach is a coach. He shouldn't be bigger than his team. And I think it's a travesty that he is next to Coach Nick Saban in commercials, because Nick Saban is the exact opposite of drawing attention to himself. He draws attention by winning. Deion draws attention by just being, I don't even know what you call him. To me, you draw attention by winning, not by opening your mouth or being upset because somebody says something droll about you. But that's neither here nor there. Kansas State goes to 5-1 as they pull out the 31-28 win. I watched a lot of this game, and the issue I still see with Colorado is, and the excuses will rain down, is despite all the star power, Deion Sanders is incapable of getting the guys up front that he needs for whatever reason. And in this game, you can have the best athletes in the world. It's still going to force you to come up short when you are not able to match up man-to-man in the trenches. And even, there's a lot of times where I look at these games and there's a lot of guys in these secondaries. Travis Hunter is one of the best players in college football. But that's one player. You got some really good players out there, but this is where the tail of the tape comes. You got minus 29 yards running the football. Minus 29. Now, I already know what Deion's going to say. I ain't running the offense. Don't look like you're running nothing over there. Look like you just a showboat guy that says, do this, do that. And I don't mind if you're going to point the blame at one of your coordinators, but you congratulate those guys when they do it. It's always Deion's got this, Deion's got that, Deion willed this. You got to take the loss too, pimp. Dumb shit. Dumb shit. You ain't game planning. I don't even think you're capable of coming up with a game plan. Prove us wrong. There's a lot of us that doubt you. All you sit there and say is hating. Can't hate on something that's not that good. I'm just saying. You want to prove to me that you that dude? Show us. You want to sit there and say, I ain't got nothing to prove. Well, guess what? You're 4-2. You're on pace to win the same number of games you won last year. And this is looking more like you're going to be right there again. What's going to be the next act? I'm done with that. But you're looking here, 185 yards on the ground for K-State. Well balanced, because they had 238 yards throwing the football for a total of 423 yards. And I'm going to be straight up honest with you. The turnovers, even Steven. And the one thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is Colorado's ability to run the football and the inability to stop it. You can't have both. You can't be bad at stopping the run and then be bad at running the ball yourself. I mean, one of the two is okay. You can be great at stopping the run, but you can't run it yourself. That's a different, animal. I mean, if Colorado could at least stop the run and then not be able to run the ball themselves, then you could have some leeway a little bit here and there. But you can't even stop the run, let alone run it. KSU 31, Colorado 28. Oh, DJ Giddens for K-State had 182 yards rushing. That guy was a beast. I kept watching him, and they couldn't tackle him. He was getting either out. He was running between the tackles, outside of tackle. He was just getting whatever he wanted. Shedeur Sanders was 34 of 40, 388 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a very costly interception. O'Marion Miller had 8 catches, 145 yards for the Colorado Buffaloes, including a long 51-yarder. But as I said, K-State 31, Colorado 28. And number 17, Boise State 28, unranked Hawaii 7, as Ashton Giante added 2 more touchdowns to his Heisman bid. Oh, did I forget he had 217 yards? When I watched this Boise State team, a lot of people don't realize there have been some great running backs that have come down the pike that are putting up these same numbers. And I remember, because Boise State generally plays what I like to call the late night, early morning, or the sleeper games, if you will. You wake up the next morning and you're like, who won that game? Kind of like the Miami game when everybody talked about who won that game. But Giante is going to be something serious. I see him as being the Heisman front runner now. He is really putting up some numbers, and I think they're going to have to bend the rules a little bit with the way he's actually performing. He's performing beautifully, and Boise State's going to give him the ball. They want so badly for some attention to garner that way, and I don't blame them. I think they're going to keep feeding him the ball, and it's just going to be fun to watch. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, y'all keep watching Ashton Giante. Boise State, number 17, Boise State, 28. Number 7, Hawaii, 7. Number 14, BYU, 41. Unranked Arizona, 19. And I can honestly say disappointing Arizona, because Noah Fafita, who was the freshman sensation last year, had 3 interceptions in this game, was 26 of 52, 275 yards. But they were able to force 6 turnovers in this game. And BYU is looking at its best season, or best start since 2020. Now, I'm looking at this team and I'm looking at how efficient and great this defense is, but I'm also looking at how this offense is able to do what they do. And that's because they run the ball and they run it efficiently. Jake Retzlaff was 18 of 32, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Isaiah Glasgow for BYU had 2 sacks in this game, and they had a total of 5 sacks in this game. Listen, if you're going to beat a team like this, you have to be able to protect these guys. We all know they run that 3-4 crazy blitz scheme. The thing, like we say, anybody that runs the 3-4, whether it's the Texas Longhorns, Georgia Bulldogs, Alabama Crimson Tide, you have to know where it's coming from. That is the first thing. The problem in college is just like in the NFL, you got quarterbacks that don't read the blitz well. And that is the lot of the problem. And you can see Noah Fafita in this game. He had problems knowing where the blitz for BYU is coming from. And they had him rattled. And even the coaching staff did not have an idea of how to stop it, or even contain it, or neutralize it. I mean, we're not looking at a team that did anything absolutely outrageously crazy out there. It was simply one of those games where BYU's defense overwhelmed Arizona's offense. But BYU 41, Arizona 19, as BYU is 6-0 for the first time since 2020. Number 11, Iowa State 28, West Virginia 16. As the Iowa State Cyclones go to 6-0 for the first time since 1938. Amazing. But looking at this game, what's impressive about it was that Iowa State was able to go into Morgantown and come out victorious. And I don't think this team should have been pushed up the ranks the way they did. I don't think they're better than a couple of teams that's on that list, and we'll get in that are in the top 25. But that's neither here nor there. I'll get into that. Yeah, Rocco Beck was 18 for 26, 265 yards and a touchdown. The running game was once again an effective staple, not an overwhelming feat, but Carson Hansen had 96 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. So, needless to say, Iowa State's getting enough done on offense and on defense against who they're playing to make things happen. Meanwhile, you look at West Virginia. Garrett Green was 18 of 32. He had 1 score, but he had 2 interceptions. 2 costly ones, I might add. So you're looking at a West Virginia team who is still trying to find their footing after some really tough losses at home this season as they fall to 3-3. But I will say there is some hope in Garrett Green, who had 87 yards on the ground and on 10 carries. If that could be anything, a weakness that people look at for Iowa State, they do have some issues stopping the run, because as a team, the West Virginia Mountaineers were able to run for 148 yards. I just think that if you're going to play them, you got to be consistent with the run. You can't abandon it just because you get in 3rd and longs and so on and so on. Sometimes you just have to take the loss. I mean, regardless, if you know that your weakness is passing the football, if you're in it to win it, sometimes you just have to say, okay, we'll live to play another down. You don't take a risk if you know you can run the football in instances. I mean, look at it. You had 2 running backs that were darn near over. You had one that was almost over 4 yards, at 4 yards a carry, and then you had one that was over 8 yards a carry, almost at 9 yards a carry. You know, you can't risk stopping what's working. That's just, I mean, as a team, you average 4 yards, over 4.5 yards a carry. As I said, Iowa State 28, West Virginia 16. Just trying to move along a little bit because I know these aren't the games you guys want to hear about. Number 11, Notre Dame 49, Stanford 7, as we saw Riley Leonard was able to come out there and put his thing down as the Irish really just imposed their will on Stanford. It was maybe, 2 or 3 drives, and then all of a sudden Notre Dame just opened up the floodgates as we didn't. The Stanford Cardinals were not even. We were barely able to put up 200 yards of offense as Riley Leonard was 16 of 22, 229 yards, 3 touchdown passes. Really, the running game, it was really spread out. Nobody really topped out. It was Jeremiah Love led the rushing with 53 yards rushing, and then Jadarian Price had 49. But as a team, Notre Dame ran for 229 yards and 4 scores. But as I said, the one thing everybody was looking for Notre Dame is whether or not they could get their passing game going. And as we said, Riley Leonard was able to come out and complete 16 of 22, and not just little short ones. They were some intermediate throws, and I think it was 1 long one. But Notre Dame 49, Stanford 7. Number 10, Clemson 49, Wake Forest 14. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Wake Forest didn't give Clemson a game. This game was close for about a quarter and a half. And arguably, to me, there were 2 plays that cost Wake Forest. There was a play in the first quarter that was a throw that the quarterback missed on a 3rd down that could have turned the tide, in my opinion. That was when they were up. It was 7-7, excuse me. Clemson had came all the way back and scored right after they scored. And then there was a big interception that after Clemson had took the lead. And after that, Wake Forest, it was like they were swimming upstream and they could never recover. And number 10, Clemson, they just closed the door on them. I'm still not a fan of Cade Klubnik. I don't care what any of these panelists say. He's got to show me he can win with the quality competition. Wake Forest did a good job, but I still think they're right there defensively, but they are a step below the elite teams defensively. As I said, Klubnik was 31 of 41, 309 yards, 3 touchdown passes, and Phil Maffa, and this is where I have a problem with Dabo Swinney and his offense. Why does it seem like Phil Maffa only touches the ball when they're playing inferior opponents? Now, I know what people are going to say. Well, you don't want them to be like Notre Dame and get beat by Northern Illinois or an Alabama and get beat by Vanderbilt. Very true. But it just seems like Maffa only gets these type of games when they're playing inferior opponents or opponents they're supposed to beat. Maffa had 109 yards. Maffa had 108 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, there were times it looked like he was unstoppable. I know people are going to say, well, he had 19 carries, but he only had 108. There were times it looked like that they just didn't have an answer for him. And I would be more encouraged if we saw more carries out of this guy. I don't understand why they're afraid to give this guy the rock. I think Phil Moffitt's one of the beastliest guys in all the country. He could be a Heisman candidate like Jonte if they gave him the ball.
Who cares?
But Clemson 49, Wake Forest 14 as we're slowly approaching those nitty-gritty games you talked about. Number 4, Tennessee 23, Florida 17. This was a very close game, and I think Tennessee's got problems. And I know you're playing a Florida team that is very desperate. You're hoping you can just get them out of Neyland Stadium with a win. I understand you've got a matchup coming up this week that is very important, and we will talk about that later. It's one of those games you dangerously look ahead to, but it's also one of those games that calls you to fall in the poll because you win 23-17 in overtime. Graham Mart was 11 of 15, 125 yards and a touchdown before he ended up leaving this game. Graham Mart, who is already, if you heard the news, he's done for the season, was at 125 yards passing, a touchdown before the end of this game. Montreal Johnson Jr. was able to carry the ball for 85 yards in this game. And looking at Tennessee, what's really, if you're a Florida fan, you look at this game and you say, wow, this is encouraging. We were able to slow down Josh Heupel's fast-paced offense in Knoxville. So if you're a Florida fan, you don't want to say there's no such thing as moral victories, but to go in and do what you did to slow down Nico Iamaleava, to go in and slow down Nico Iamaleava is tough. I mean, Iamaleava has had some subpar performances the last couple of weeks and didn't even throw a touchdown pass this week. You know, he was 16 of 26, 169 yards and an interception. So while Nico has been garnering all this attention the early part of the season, people learning how to say his name, Iamaleava, now all of a sudden people are expecting to put up those same results that made people want to learn to say your name correctly. But I think what it is Heupel and Iamaleava have to sit down and understand, okay, we've got to change some things now. Everybody's not understanding we've got guys out to the edges. But that's another thing I've noticed. Tennessee is not doing those formations anymore as much. Let me say that where they've got the wide receivers eating up the entire edge. And so the running game is not nearly as efficient. Now, I will say this. They're still running effectively. But when you talk effectively as far as efficiently, you're getting 3.3 yards a carry. Okay, this is a team that ran it 43 times. And so if you're running it that many times and you're not really getting the effectiveness that you want, there needs to be some changes. And the one thing I've noticed is they're not moving back and forth as much as they normally do. And there's not a lot of shifting going on. When they're running it, they're basically saying in a nutshell, okay, we're going to spread you wide and we're going to force you to tackle in space. But at the same time, the problem you have is when you're saying, okay, tackle in space, they see it coming or they necessarily are prepared for it. And Florida was very good in a lot of situations. Now, I will say this. A lot of people are going to say Dylan Sampson carried the ball 27 times and had 112 yards rushing with 3 touchdowns. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, me as a coach, I would be okay with that. Because if you're Florida, you're looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, they're not killing us, with their speed of their wide receivers. Their wide receivers, they're not going to beat us. We're not going to let Iamaleava beat us. And the stats reflect that. You look at Florida outpassed the Volunteers. And then here's the other aspect of it. Tennessee only outrushed Florida by 5 yards. So we can either look at this game and say it was a true trap game or near trap game, or Tennessee is struggling. And I would venture to say it's the latter. They're struggling. Because this ain't the first game they've underachieved. All I can say is they better get it together before this week coming. You know what I'm talking about. Number 7, Alabama 27. Unranked South Carolina 25. Now see, this is what really irritates me with college football, and I will tell you why. South Carolina, how in the world do you come out here and play your best game against Alabama when you had a chance to shock the world against Ole Miss? And I can only come up with one explanation. They knew if they beat Ole Miss, they wouldn't have had a chance at beating Alabama. So they would rather go 1-1 and beat Bama as opposed to Ole Miss. Bruh. I don't get it. And there are going to be a lot of people say, that makes no sense. Oh, it does. Because if Ole Miss loses to South Carolina in Columbia, guess what? Alabama's not going to take you lightly. They're not going to look past you. But see, because Ole Miss walked in there and walked the dog with them, you ain't finna sit here and tell me that this Ole Miss team is better than Alabama. You can hang that up.
Stop the cap.
We'll get to Ole Miss being there. I will tell you right now, there ain't no way in the world that Alabama was 2 points better than South Carolina. See, I can't even get it out my mouth. Come on, man. That's like saying peanut butter pancakes. And I love peanut butter. I don't want peanut butter on my pancakes now. Just doesn't work. But what's happening is I'm of the belief that Alabama's just looking past teams. They've been worked up. The Georgia games got them on a mountain, and they can't bring it back. And people are gonna blame Caleb DeBoer and say he ain't Nick Saban. He ain't this. Look, Nick Saban doesn't have the players. Didn't have the players that Caleb DeBoer had. Reality check. He lost a lot of players that Nick Saban had. Now, he retained some. Not saying he didn't. But the reality of it is, there are a lot of players that did not return. So we need to stop this whole notion that, oh, he got the same type of players. No, he does not. Let's eliminate that. We need to give Kalen DeBoer his dues. He's still in his first year. And he's got to get into the grip of understanding who his players are. These are not his players. He's got some that are his players. And then he has to deal with a quarterback and a wide receiver that was not his guys. And I think he's doing a good job. I think Jalen Milroe is starting to develop into the quarterback that Nick Saban probably will not be able to develop him into. I'm just keeping it in perspective. Kalen DeBoer is a quarterback's coach. An offensive coach. Nick Saban was not. This is why you see a lot of Alabama quarterbacks struggle when they get to the NFL, because it's a lack of development. Call it what you want. Jalen Milroe was 16 of 23, had 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Huge. And I think the issue is that DeBoer is trying to mold him into a passer type quarterback, and it's costing them situations. Milroe's trying to have the idea and the thought process of a passing quarterback, and he's struggling with it. But looking here, he still had 36 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns, including a 27-yarder. And the other thing that I'm missing out on is Alabama had 38 carries, 104 yards. When have you ever seen Alabama in the last 20 years get outrushed by a team? I don't recall it. I mean, even the total yards, the disparity in the total yards, South Carolina had 374 total yards to Alabama's 313. That's unheard of, because Alabama's defense is supposed to be superior to darn near all but maybe 3-4 defenses. See, that's where I question Kalen DeBoer, is where's the defense? It's a huge issue. Because I will say that South Carolina had 4 turnovers. So that is one staple that the Alabama defense actually presents, is they always are very good at causing the turnovers. But Alabama's got a lot of things to fix if they're struggling with this a team like South Carolina. And I'm not trying to be mean, but that's just reality. And this time of possession is killing them. Once again, Alabama lost the time of possession 31 minutes to 28 minutes. So there's going to have to be some reckoning when it comes to this. They're going to have to fix these things. And they better fix it before this week, because most of you know what comes next. Georgia 41, Mississippi State 31. This game was a lot closer, but Mississippi State, came out in the second half, and basically after they had got down 27-10 at the half, they actually made it interesting. It was 34-24 at the end of 3, and as I said, there were moments where Mississippi State could have made this extremely interesting. But I think ultimately what it boils down to, this was another one of those games where Georgia was caught. Looking ahead, you all know what we're talking about. Was a good game. I didn't get to really watch the game, but I will tell you this. I think Carson Beck's going to have to play a lot better, and this defense of Georgia is going to have to tackle better. Mike Van Buren for Mississippi State threw for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's not what you want to see if you're a Dogs fan and you got Quinn Ewers coming in to play. Oh, I'm sorry. If you got to go and play Quinn Ewers. I'm sorry, I'm giving all the little secrets away. But Carson Beck in his own right was pretty good. He was 36 of 48 for 459 and had 3 touchdowns. But he had 2 interceptions. Get it? Yeah. And the one thing that I'm looking at that is really bothering me, and Kirby's going to have to fix this. Where's your running game? And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Georgia Bulldog fans that agree with me. Where's the running game? I mean, we've talked about 2 powerhouses that are not running the football. And I'm not even a Dog fan, as Brad will tell you. Gab out to you, buddy. I didn't forget you. You gotta believe that at some point you gotta run the football. And I'm refused to believe that we are so caught up in the way the game is played today that we refuse to acknowledge that the ball needs to be run. That we need to ignore running the football. You're just not going to get me to believe that we're at that function of the game now, is that we're just totally going to ignore running the football now. I'm just not going to buy that. But as I said, Beck had over 450 yards passing, and I'm going to put it to you like this. If Georgia thinks they're going to throw the football against Texas, they're nuts. They'll be able to throw somewhat, but you think about I put it like this. Georgia's first team should have scrimmaged their second team, because that is exactly how Texas plays on defense. It's the same way Georgia does. They blitz crazy. And if Carson Beck can't deal with what Alabama did, and those guys aren't nearly as athletic, they're going to catch it with these Texas secondary guys, because they're long, very athletic. I know I'm giving it away. Number 5, Georgia 41, Mississippi State 31. Penn State 33, USC 30 in overtime. Now, I'm going to tell you something. For Penn State, for them to move Penn State up and to move several teams down when victory, that don't make no sense. Because this was not even impressive. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I get sick and tired of hearing analysts talk about Drew Aller. Drew Aller plays really well against the teams that he is supposed to. Now, we went and we thought Lincoln Riley had turned the corner with this defense. Wrong. Because I'm going to tell you something. If Drew Aller, watch this, y'all. I want y'all to watch this. If Drew Aller can throw for 391, and not to mention he had 3 interceptions, this Penn State team is 6-0. Yes, they are. But we've seen this picture before. But then what happens? They either play Michigan or they play Ohio State. They have not broken that barrier yet. I'm not sold on them. This USC defense is pretty good. But they ain't good enough to be throwing for no 391 against. They got 3 interceptions, which just tells me that Drew Aller is just like I told all of you. He ain't that good. Now, I'm not saying a guy can't make mistakes, but I'm saying you throw 3 interceptions, but then you come out and you throw for 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns against inferior competition, and you got everybody just singing your praises. No. And I like James Franklin, but he's got to start nailing that quarterback position. That is his biggest Achilles heel at this moment. And see, another issue I see with Penn State, USC had 189 yards rushing the football. Not good. Not good. And I'm going to tell you get to play in the Ohio States and even the Michigans, the Oregons. They're going to run the football. Much more efficient than USC does. Oh, yeah. See, USC ran it 24 times. Oregon's going to try to run it just as much. So is Ohio State. But the justification to move them up in a win like this, when arguably USC had this game, no comment. But number 4, Penn State 33, USC 30. Now, let us go back to the matchups of the week. Starting with number 9, Ole Miss, and number 12, LSU. As LSU pulled out a overtime victory, 29-26, off of a beautiful touchdown pass. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I kind of wondered to myself. I mean, I get it. He threw 2 interceptions, but he also threw 3 touchdowns. And there was one. When I saw that Kyron Lacy throw to the end zone, I was sitting there looking at how big this guy is. This guy had 5 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. But if you watch the play again, it's like Kyron Lacy was playing. It was like, dude, get off me. It'd be like me playing with my son in the backyard. Dude, get off me. Ain't no way I'm not trying to figure out a way to get this guy one-on-one every single down. I was watching this and I was like, wow. And they had double coverage, but the safety was late. You know, and just looking at this, and the other aspect of it was, I like the way Ole Miss plays defense. I will say this. Because they ran it 24 times, they being LSU, and for 84 yards. They were unable to really get anything going on the ground. So Nussmeier had a really good game as far as when it counted. But his accuracy, on the other hand, 22 of 51. I guess I can walk back what I said earlier, because I forgot about those, because it seemed like he kind of got in a rhythm late in the game. And when they needed it. I mean, that's really all that matters, is if he got hot when it mattered. But Jackson Dart, on the other hand, 24 42, 284. And it looked more along the lines that it looked to me like Ole Miss was worried about Jackson Dart making a mistake in this game. But I will say this, the running game was very active in this game, even though there was a lot of runs in this game, 42 for 180. But however, Lane Kiffin rarely runs the football to this extent. But they also had a lot of plays. You're talking about they ran over 84 plays. So I will say this, you would think they would have had LSU wore out, but it's a level of attrition. And then, of course, it's in Death Valley. You got to really look at it and say, but to really look at this game and say that Ole Miss lost this game, I would say they did lose this game. I think ultimately LSU was very fortunate. You know, I would say that the 2 turnovers that Ole Miss had were game changers. Because really, in reality, to me, this game felt more like, with the way they were able to run the football, them being Ole Miss, and to be able to consistently get first downs on third down, you just had a lot of, to me, it was a game of missed opportunities and Ole Miss unable to capitalize. It was a situation that even in the overtime period, when you see Lacey, you know you have to shade over and not allow him to be one-on-one with that defender. And even looking at this game, it was 17-13 at the half, and there was opportunities for Ole Miss, and of course there was opportunities for LSU, but to me there were more opportunities for Ole Miss to win this game. There were many times I felt like Ole Miss was gonna walk away with this game, and I was like, okay, Brian Kelly's gonna have to answer, but they found a way, and you could see the relief on Kelly's face when he did the interview. Because I can tell you right now, that would not have been a pretty sight had they lost that game. But LSU 29, Ole Miss 26. As I said, I will say that I think Ole Miss showed me something. But I will also tell you, even though LSU came out with the victory, they're very lucky. This game's on a neutral field. Ole Miss wins this game. Just saying. Number 1, Texas. Number 18, Oklahoma. 34-3. Now, the only reason I'm talking about this is because I love the name of this rivalry. The Red River Rivalry. Or as I call, the Red River Shootout. Well, it wasn't much of a shootout this year. I think ultimately, when you play a rivalry game, you better keep quiet. Listen, I know you get bragging rights for a whole year, but Texas came out and they spanked that. They spanked that. Ain't no other term for it. Texas basically left no doubt. Said, how dare you do what you did to us last year? That was luck. Dylan Gabriel is in Eugene right now. You ain't doing that again. And they didn't. They did not. Quinn Ewers was 20 of 29 for 199 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. But the story of this game was the fact that Steve Sarkisian, who I'm falling in love with as a coach, I'm really happy that he has been able, and you guys heard me say this on the show, Sark has done a great job in taking advantage of his second chance and rebuilding what was once the most prestigious program in the country. It took a while, but the University of Texas is back. And I'm not even a Texas fan, you guys. But they went back and started going to the Texas Longhorn roots. Wisner had 118 yards rushing on 13 carries. As a team, the Longhorns had 30 carries, 177 yards. That's almost 6 yards a pop. This ain't the same Oklahoma. This was the same Oklahoma defense that gave Tennessee problems. And what was funny is Sark was trying to get Ewers going, and when he saw that there was, let me just see what I can do here. Let's stop worrying about what Quinn gets. Let's just start running the ball. Let's hand it off. Oklahoma couldn't handle it. And this brings us to the next game that we're going to see this week. Can Georgia handle that running game? Can they handle that kind of push? Because I'm going to tell you, if Georgia sells out against Texas's running game, Ewers is going to burn them up. See, when you look at teams that say, hey, look, we're going to make you one-dimensional, you got to pick your poison. That's why Texas is so good. Texas is so well-rounded on both sides of the ball, it is very difficult to pick what you want to be your poison. And see, Georgia had that at one time. Now, I know we're not talking about Georgia, but Oklahoma's got problems at the quarterback. The question is going to be, can Brent Venables live through this season? Or can Brent Venables survive this season? Are the alumni and the powers that be at Oklahoma going to be willing to be patient? Only time will tell. Because right now, the quarterback situation is not very good. Michael Hawkins was 19 of 30 for 148 yards, no scores. He only had 27 yards on 20 carries. But here's a lot of what you see with this Texas defense. The Texas Longhorns caused 2 fumbles in that game. And the lone interception was the interception that Ewers had was the lone turnover. But you look at how this Texas defense, they only allowed 89 yards and 148 passing yards to Oklahoma. And I'm just going to throw this out there. The only way Texas is going to struggle, and I mean, we even look at the time of possession. Texas had the ball 5 fewer minutes than Oklahoma, and they scored 31 more points. So this is a team, and I'm gonna put it like this. I'll give you my predictions on another show, but this is gonna be a fun game between Texas and Georgia. But I honestly think if Georgia gets behind like they did against Alabama, the floodgates of this defense are gonna open, and just like they did with Oklahoma, Carson Beck's not gonna get. I get it. These are 2 different quarterbacks, but Beck's not gonna get all that time. Texas is gonna bring the house. Texas don't sit back and wait. Number 1, Texas 34, Oklahoma 3. Which leads us to the matchup of the week. And it was a good one if you didn't watch it. Find a way to watch this game, people. Number 3, Oregon 32. Number 2, Ohio State 31. Now, I will say there was some favoritism in the officiating early. Because there was a play that went Ohio State's way that should not have. And it was a grab that they gave them a catch on a long play that should have been reversed. So the officials should have reviewed that. But outside of that, what really impressed me was the composure. And I get it, you guys. They were playing in Eugene. But I'm just going to keep it in perspective. And I'm not blasting Will Howard because he didn't get down 1 second earlier so they could kick the field goal. I just have not been a fan of Will Howard even when he was at Kansas State. He did finish, however, 28 of 35, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. But you look at how efficient Ohio State was able to run the football. I had a problem with the fact that Travion Henderson only had 10 carries in this game, and he averaged 8.7 yards a carry.
Run.
What are you doing? I mean, I'm at a loss. Jeremiah Smith had 9 catches, 100 yards, and a score. Emeka Ibuka had 10 catches for 93 yards. See, I get it. You got great receivers, and you want to utilize them. And I say this all the time. There are teams out there that would love to have these type of players on their team and be able to, put them out there and throw it like that. But you also got to have a gunslinger to do it. But then let's look at the Oregon side where Dylan Gabriel threw for 341 and 2 touchdowns. Now, we all know the Oregon Ducks like to use their offense, their pace, to get you in a position where they can run the football. And they spread you out. They run the ball with pace. And we look at Jordan James, who had 23 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Gabriel also had a touchdown run, which was, I think it caught everybody off guard. Nobody in the stadium saw it coming. He had 4 carries for 32 yards. That is 8 yards a pop, you guys. I thought Oregon exposed a lot of things that a lot of teams are going to be able to use against Ohio State. However, you got to bring a defense to it. As I said, I think this game was so much fun because it was really a back and forth type of chess match. You saw Oregon go for 2-point conversions early, whereas Ohio State was trying to just get points. I think they realized they needed to get everything that Oregon was gambling with. So they ended up doing that, and it ended up working in their favor for a little bit. But needless to say, I think this game was pretty even keeled. People are going to sit there and say Ohio State didn't do this, they didn't do that. I've never been a fan of Ryan Day. I think he opens his mouth too much, considering that he has not done much with his talent that he has. He's had championship caliber quarterbacks, receivers, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and cornerbacks, arguably linebackers, and O-linemen. So I would say just coach, be quiet until you do something. You remind me of Harbaugh. That's the tides have turned. Just saying. I just think ultimately they've got to run the ball more. To me, they got to run the ball more. Be more creative. Travion Henderson should have gotten the ball more. Just saying. But it was one of the best games of the season to watch. And I think they did right not bringing Ohio State down. Because to lose by 1 point on the road, the Posters should have thought about that when Notre Dame and Georgia played a few years ago. Just saying. You lose a game by 1 point in thrilling fashion that Will Howard slides and the clock expires. And you can't blame Will Howard for that. That's not why I say I have an issue with Howard. Howard's just never impressed me as a passer. You know, he's just never impressed me. And I'm sorry, you know, but not sorry. This was the game. I don't want to bring up the incident, but there was a player that was kicked out for undisclosed reason. I don't want to say it because you shouldn't be doing this. I don't encourage this. If any of you guys saw that, I don't encourage that. Don't do that, please. That has no place in this game. You know, if you can't deal with the trash talking, just don't do it. Don't be a part of it. Walk away. But as I said, this was a wonderful game. Evan Stewart for the Ducks had 7 grabs, 149 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said, very entertaining game. The Ducks move up to number 2. There were so many people talking about move them up to number 1. No, you're supposed to win at home. You're supposed to win at home. You're supposed to win at home. You're not supposed to move up to number 1. No, you just take the place of the team you beat. Now, moving forward, let's go down the top 25 before we get out of here. And, guys, I'm just going to say it just like this. I think I'm going to give a lot of heat to these people that are doing polls because I don't like it. I think it's absolutely wrong when you say you want to. One week you're saying one thing and the next week you're saying another. But we got Navy at 5-0. That's really awesome. To see them in there. And then there's another team in there that you guys know about. I'm going to get to them. Michigan goes to 24. They were ranked 24 last week. How's that? Then Army comes in at 6-0. They were unranked last week at number 23. Then you have the Illini who move up 1 spot after their near disaster. SMU comes up to 21 after being ranked 20, moving up 4 spots from last week. The Pitt Panthers 6-0, be at number 22, number 20, moving up 2 spots. Then there's Mizzou. I honestly think Pittsburgh should be over Mizzou. Not impressed at all. They move up from 21. Then there's Ole Miss. They drop down to 18. Should have been dropped last week. This ain't nothing new. You drop them 9 spots for a close loss in overtime. Really, y'all make no sense. Kansas State goes to number 17, moving up 1 spot. Indiana goes up to 18 after finishing 6-0. After finishing 6-0 on a bye week. Then Boise State moves up with Heisman hopeful Giante from 17 to 15. Texas A&M moves up to number 15 in a bye week. BYU at 6-0. From 14 to 13, Notre Dame drops 1 spot after demolishing Stanford at home. They drop 1 spot. Tennessee goes down 3 spots after their struggles. Clemson stays steadfast at number 10. Iowa State moves up 2 spots. Not sure about that one. LSU moves up 4 spots. Moves up 5 spots. No, Ole Miss was overrated. Alabama stays put. Really? You're kidding me, right? Miami stays put after being... Miami moves up to number 6. I'm sorry, they move up 2 spots. Georgia stays put. Yeah, I guess. Ohio State moves down 2 spots to number 4 after losing, and Penn State moves up 1. No. Oregon moves up 1 spot, and Texas reclaims the number 1 spot. And that, in my opinion, is the right call. But you guys let me know what's up. Brad, appreciate all the love. I did not get your comments until after I started shooting. I'll bring them up in the next show when we do the predictions, my guy. Appreciate all the love you give me. But as well as you other guys that are coming out there that are putting up comments, make sure when you get ready to subscribe, you also comment down there and say you have subscribed. Also, go to the Facebook page, Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Join the group as well as joining the page. And you can catch all the wonderful things that we'll be doing over there, setting up polls and whatnot, and checking out other things that we can get involved in. Also, go to Mr. CeeLo on Instagram and find out the other things I'm caught up in. But until the next time, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.